The Racing Pod on Off the Ball.
Yeah, it is the Racing Pod. It's Johnny Ward today, and David Jennings is standing in for John Duggan, who was in sensational tipping form last week, and we will get to that anon. And David Jennings later than Paul Carberry today to arrive on the line. How are you?
Yeah, I hope my performance in the actual race itself is as good as Paul Carberry's. I'll be happy with that.
Yeah,
a few IT issues, Johnny, but we got there in the end.
That's fine. We're delighted to be able to bring you this new show every Friday, and it includes analysis, race previews, tips, stories, interviews, and crack. The first half of the pod each week is free to air. The second part is exclusively for members. And if you go to offtheball.com/join, you don't want to miss out on all the info, because our tipping last week in the free to air section, Venetia Williams' horse Champard was the nap of JD in the Beecher Chase. His nap returned at 18-1, beating my selection actually in the race, Cocoa Beach. My own nap was a non-runner. And the two of us made a good case for Le Patron in the Henry VIII Novices Chase at Sandown at 20-1. So that's a 356-1 double. Of course, past performance does not guarantee anything. No pressure, DJ.
I feel a bit like David Moyes, I think, following the great Sir Alex. That was incredible by John Duggan. Did he fancied the winner of the Beecher, did he?
He did, slash for the Grand National as well. You actually mentioned Alex Ferguson, because Alex Ferguson came up in something I was reading this morning about Rocket Gibraltar and JP McManus, who's trending on Twitter this morning. Extraordinary news, DJ, yesterday. I mean, if you haven't heard this, what did you make of it?
Sure, look, it's astonishing, really. I suppose he has it to give, and that's one point, obviously. But, he doesn't have to give it. He's not obliged to make these donations. And I think he does value the kind of grassroots GAA kind of, as a pathway to life in general. And I think he sees the kind of Gaelic games in general, be it hurling, football, ladies football. I think he does see it as a good avenue in life. And if he can help people pursue good avenues in life, that's what he's trying to do. And I know people are criticising, maybe he could show his wealth in other areas. But he's shown it to the GAA, and there are 32 county boards all over the country smiling from head to toe this morning, Johnny. So I say fair play to him.
I was just saying yesterday as well, the amount of stables that he invests in fairness to him, and a lot of struggling yards will have his patronage. Most owners, you see how concentrated it is at the top, be it in Britain or Ireland. To be fair to JP McManus, he has helped an awful lot of small yards stay going.
He absolutely has. And you talk to any trainers in Ireland who, over the years, even I did a story actually, the horse called Fota Island that died during the week, and you forget Mouse Morris has had so many horses for JP McManus over the years. John Kiley, who won a big award at the Horse Racing Ireland Awards last week, he's had so many horses for him over the years, the likes of Carlingford Lock, and that it's not just the big stables, the Gordon Elliott's, the Willie Mullins, it is the smaller stables as well that he has been helping. And I think in many ways that's kind of intertwined with what he's doing with the GAA as well. He's trying to share it in the best possible way he can. It's not just being condensed into specific areas. If you're donating $1 million to 32 county boards, that's an awful lot of people who are going to benefit in some shape or form from that money being donated. So, look, I take it as an immense positive, to be honest with you, Johnny.
Yeah, and I'm sure there will be plenty in the papers over the weekend. I'm really looking forward to reading all the stuff about JP, because he's very, very, very media shy. He rarely gives interviews. A lot of mystery about him. But certainly it's a fascinating development. I suppose the other big story of the week, DJ, which I felt was, again, really thought-provoking, this concept potentially of the BHA restricting trainers to 4 runners in the good handicaps in British racing. And the Racing Post has obviously covered this since. Kind of a mixed reaction to it. Eddie O'Leary coming down very strongly on it. What did you make of it all, and do you think it'll go anywhere?
I don't know. It's kind of a funny one. I can see both sides, and I'm sure you can too. You can kind of see both sides, but I would see one side slightly more than the other side. I think it's very hard to try and govern this, because if you can say to a trainer, you're only allowed to have 4 runners in a specific race, which is, in fairness, it is a reasonable amount of a reasonable quantity of numbers. If you can say to a trainer to do this, you're just basically using the trainer and the trainer as the one identity. But the trainer is not one identity, because you've also got owners. So the trainer is training specifically for certain owners. So if you look at Gordon Elliott and all his runners in the Tri-Town Chase at Navan back in November, he was catering for various different owners, and his point was that if I didn't run all these horses in the race, there would have not been a full field. We wouldn't have a competitive handicap chase to feature the year at Navan, and it would have been a little bit of a damn squib. So that is that point. And then Eddie O'Leary obviously came out this week and said that, well, look, if they do bring this in, which is an absolute disgrace, that we're just, for the day, send our horses to different trainers to run under a different trainer's name, which will be hard to police as well. I don't know how you'd police that and sending a horse to a specific trainer for a specific day and then send them back to that trainer afterwards. I think it will be a complete mess. I think you're opening up a can of worms. And I think for the backlash that you're going to get and for the negativity that it could potentially bring, I can see why they're trying to do it. They're trying to create a competitive environment where more trainers and more kind of smaller trainers have a better chance to win big races. So I can see where they're coming from. But I think you are punishing the top trainers. You're punishing them for being successful as well. You're punishing them for getting owners into the yard. You're punishing them for making the most of their profession. So, look, I know people are comparing it to different things like caps in football and various different other sports like the NFL draft and stuff like that. But I think in racing, if you're an owner, and we need owners, Johnny, you know as well as I do, we need owners right now more than anything to keep this sport going. And if you're telling an owner where he can send his horse and he can't choose his own trainer because Gordon Elliott won't be able to take a horse, or Willie Mullins won't be able to take a horse, or Henry de Bromhead won't be able to take a horse because they have the potential to have too many runners in a Grand National or a Grand Annual at Cheltenham or something like that, I think it's a very, very dangerous thing to do.
Yeah, I remember Eddie's brother Michael Leary's on the Late one time, and whoever was presenting goes, Michael, is the customer always right, Michael? And he goes, customer is nearly always wrong. And I thought that was a legendary thing to say. The problem with this, DJ, the BHA is nearly always wrong. Like, it literally, the changes it makes to racing, I think, for me, like the changes to the National, absolute rubbish. The changes they've made to Cheltenham, rubbish. Pandering to people that basically have no interest in racing, will never have any interest in racing. Having said that, and I think you've alluded to this yourself, like I would have spoken to trainers last week who would actually, Irish trainers who would actually welcome this.
Yeah, there are people. Of course there are. There are more small trainers than big trainers. So there are, if a smaller trainer sees an opportunity to have more of a chance of winning a big race and getting more horses, of course they're going to support it. But I just think it's still like you're basically penalising the successful. So you're penalising a profession for being like really good at what they do. So Gordon Elliott and Willie Mullins and Henry de Bromhead are obviously the top three trainers in Ireland at the moment. They're possibly and probably the three of the best trainers Ireland have ever had. Yeah. And you're basically punishing them for being successful, which I don't necessarily agree with. I don't know what you think.
Well, I spoke to Gavin Cromwell and Liz Doyle, among others, we'll say, yesterday at Naas, and I do admire their attitude. And like you know Gavin quite well, your neck of the woods. He's really trying to expand. Obviously, Liz is kind of a smaller operation, but she's like, these are exceptional trainers. We just gotta, we gotta try and match them, and that's why Gavin is expanding. He's very, very hungry, extremely committed to his job, having a sensational run of it. Has bought a patch of land beside him for a lot of money to install another gallop. And his attitude is, the rising tide lifts the other boats. We just have to take them on.
That's it. It's like everything in life, Johnny. Do you want to win a championship with your local club when you're told the best team in the championship? So say Kilmacud, Crokes and Dublin are told, right, you're only allowed to play your 11 best players. There's 4 your first team that you're not allowed to play in the Dublin Championship. Do you think St. Vincent's are going to want to win a championship that way? Of course they're not going to want to win a championship. They're going to want to beat the best team that Kilmacud Crokes are able to put out on the field. And that's the level. They want to reach that level. And that's the level that most trainers will want to try and reach as well. They want to win a Grand National, where if Gordon Elliott does have 8 good enough horses to run the Grand National, or 7 or 6 or 5 or whatever it is, they want to be able to beat them all and prove that we've won the best possible race we can. So I think you can compare it to other sports. And I'm just not in favour of punishing the best. I think there are other ways, and I don't know what they are, but I think there are better ways of trying to deal with this problem.
We have to not get away from this as well in terms of both flat and national hunt. The standard of racing in Ireland, we completely take it for granted. We take it for granted how good it is on both levels, and we have to admire the virtuosity of the horse we have on show, which brings me on to my next part of the show, DJ Performance of the Week. I'm going to give mine first. It was at Naas yesterday. What could it have been? It could be one of maybe 3.
It's Blood Destiny, surely.
Of course it is, DJ. So Blood Destiny, Paul Townend, that jump at the first, I was just like, Holy, it was like this horse has gone from even money to like this horse cannot be beaten, even though he's going 2.5 miles. I was talking to Patrick Mullins after, he's not the biggest in the world, and their other horse in the race, Spanish Harlem, was far bigger horse. I thought he was sensational, so he's my performance of the week. I'm not saying he'll necessarily win an Arkle or whatever. Wherever he goes on soft ground in Ireland, I can't wait to see him again.
Yeah, this is outrageous after timing now. Outrageous, but it's kind of after timing, but I did say it before the event. I did Willie Mullins a stable tour in the Racing Post, and he was one of the horses, like he's talking about 150 horses, maybe 200 horses he might have spoken about to me. He was one I came away and kind of went, oh, he's kind of one from left field that he was, far more complimentary about than I was expecting. And I actually did a column the week after. I did Gordon Elliott's stable tour, Henry de Bromhead, and Willie Mullins'. And I did a column when I was finished the stable tours, kind of the big takeouts from these stable tours, just nuggets I picked up that might have been picked up in the stable tour. And number one on the list was that Blood Destiny is much too big of a price for the Arkle, as I thought he was a 2 miler at the time. That was 2.5 miles, obviously, at Naas on Thursday. But Willie spoke glowingly about him. Anytime I kind of asked Patrick or Paul Townend about him as well, they just seemed to have a little bit of a glint in their eye. And have you ever seen a horse to love jumping fences as much as him? It was like, where's the next fence? Where's the next fence? Give me a fence. He just wanted to jump. And when you have a horse that really wants to jump, you have something a little bit special.
If you could do like we have a split screen here, you and I at the moment, right? If you could do a split screen of him jumping the first and Hartwood jumping the first, the comparison, and Hartwood jumped it fine, but like Hartwood is here and he's just like it was sensational to watch. But what is your performance of the week?
Similar theme, Johnny. I'm going for Willie Mullins trained novice chaser as well, and I was working
back to last Saturday,
and a bit like you with Blood Destiny, and probably more so, I was absolutely blown away by Indiana Dream, who's owned by the one and only Mr. JP McManus, who we spoke about earlier. And he was one of these horses, Johnny, that very few people knew anything about, because he'd only ran once for Willie Mullins, came from France. He won a maiden hurdle, and I often think that the racing around New Year's Day, I actually got married on New Year's Day, that's probably why, and I always have to take it off because it's my anniversary, but I always think the racing on New Year's Day or in around New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, you kind of forget about it because there's so much happening over Christmas at Leopardstown. You've got King George of Kempton, the Welsh Nationals on the 27th of December as well. And those couple of days I often think you forget about. And Indiana Dream won a maiden hurdle at Fairyhouse on New Year's Day last year, and people kind of half forgot about it. He won by 15 lengths from a horse who actually is trained by Gordon Elliott, who's won 4 times since, on V it's called, which is obviously Meath in Irish. He's rated 131. He absolutely hammered him. Luke Dempsey actually rode him, and he got injured afterwards. We never saw him since, and everybody kind of half forgot about him. He turned up at Navan last Saturday, was quite easy to back. Nobody knew what to expect, and what we got was an awesome performance, Johnny. It was a really, really good race, and he made some very, very talented horses look extremely ordinary. Hidden Valley Lake was well fancied for the Albert Barton last season, and he looked beaten when he came down in the straight. And I did a runner-up, Sam Felicien, who ran against Facile Vega at Navan on his previous start, is quite a good horse as well. And Indiana Dream made him look distinctly average. So Indiana Dream is my performance of the week, Johnny, and it's another JP McManus trained novice chaser that looks like a leading fancy for the Cheltenham Festival. He has some team going there this year.
Yeah, we're soon enough. We'll be coming to the end of the first half of the show. The second half is for subscribers, but we will go through a couple of races. JD will be back next week, and but not next week. He'll be back in January. But just to mention your wedding, DJ. Often the best part of a wedding is that part between the church and the kind of the whole ceremony. DJ's was in O'Connell's in Screen. Now, if you want, like, if Carlsberg did, and I'm not even sure they sell Carlsberg in O'Connell's in Screen because they just sell Guinness, like, but if Carlsberg were to do, what a pub, DJ. Yeah,
absolutely. And the pictures, like, it is the iconic picture that we got outside the church. If you could just actually get rid of me out of the picture, and if you could get Aoife and Mrs. O's the pub in the picture, it would be the perfect picture because, fabulous spot. And it just suited because my wedding, we got married in Kilmullen, and then it was in Ballymacarvey, so it was just right in the middle. And it was happy memories, Johnny.
Yeah, wedding reviews next week, sponsored by. Anyway, so let's review Cork and Navan, because there was some good stuff. DJ, apart from that at Navan, we had some other good performances as well, and then obviously rolling into El Fabiolo, who did the job at Cork on Sunday.
He did. To be honest, I was a little bit more impressed with him than a few people. I thought he was a bit gassy early on. He wanted to get on with things. This was very much a case of just blowing away the cobwebs, and he properly blew them away. And he's still beating Phil Dore and Mascada, who won a Grand Annual. He's still beating them convincingly. I'd say there's loads more improvement to come. And I love the way Willie Mullins, straight after the race, said basically we're going to Ascot for the race in January, which is where John Bon would have originally been going. I'd imagine John Bon won the Tingle Creek, but Willie said no. Well, we're going there. So
we need more of these clashes. We need this. Like you can't just be John Bon 1-5 every race until Cheltenham and the same with that. Let them run against each other on different ground, different conditions. One has to get on the boat. Let them run against each other. Yeah,
absolutely. And Willie has laid down the gauntlet. He said, we're going there. We're not going to Leopardstown at Christmas. We're going to Ascot. And it will be very, very interesting. I did notice that Nicky Henderson last week, in the last couple of days, was kind of saying it's either go to Ascot in January or else potentially the Game Spirit at Newbury in February. So he's given himself an out. So I just hope, I really do hope.
Come on,
I do hope the Clarence house should be between John Bon and El Fabiolo, the 1-2 from the Arkle last season, the 1-2 in the betting for the Champion Chase this year. And if you're beaten at Ascot, whichever one of them is beaten, you get a chance for revenge at Cheltenham. It's only a couple of weeks later, so hopefully, fingers crossed, they both go there.
Famously, JP McManus paid 570 grand for John Bon, which I think he's gotten back actually in prize money after the race at the weekend. I tipped Slade Steel in the Tara Novice Hurdle. Kind of hard to know, DJ, where this horse comes in terms of they have like the same connections have on Tubber, who I think could be possibly as good as him. But this horse's attitude was good. He beat Lecky Watson and Stellar Story, who was very well fancied. As I say, I loved his attitude.
Yeah, he was solid, if not spectacular. Showed a nice turn of foot coming down to the last, and then kind of gritty enough, got down and dirty after the last to hold off Lecky Watson. Lecky Watson is a horse I think is worth keeping on side. He's a big, awkward so-and-so that just doesn't really help Paul Townend, but I thought he was staying on strongly at the end. I wouldn't be surprised to see him developing into an Albert Barton contender maybe. But Slade Steel, a touch of class. I'd say he's going to go to the Ballymore potentially with an each-way chance. Whether he's good enough to win it or not, I'm not quite sure. But look, he's a very good horse, very good young horse.
Relatively small fields at Cheltenham tomorrow for a Saturday meet. 8, 7, 7, 12, 9, 10, 10. A lot of these are handicaps as well. And one of those handicaps is the Virgin Best December Gold Cup handicap. Top weight in this is none other than Fakir Dudares for Joseph O'Brien. Be a rare enough runner for Joseph over in Britain at this stage. So we'll go through a couple of races before we get on to the second half of the show. And obviously that he runs as well, DJ, keeps the weight down a little bit for So Scottish, who has a tongue tie on for the first time. Mark Walsh in the plate for Emmett Mullins.
Yeah, this is like a JP McManus tribute show, because I fancy So Scottish, who is of course owned by JP McManus. I've long thought that this horse is really well handicapped, and I think the prices he's gone off in big races suggest that connections think he's well handicapped as well. Like, he ran in the plate at Cheltenham last season on Thursday, and if you remember the Thursday, it was a desperate day. It was a horrible day. The ground got really soft. He was sent off 11-2, but he travelled beautifully through the race. Like, I'd say if you were on him, you'd want to be on him everywhere, apart from just after the turn into the straight, when maybe his inexperience caught him out a little bit. He ran there off mark 143. He's been dropped £2 from his English mark to 141. The fact that Fakir Dudares is in the race keeps his weight down. He comes in here with a lovely weight, I think, of 10 stone 7. Mark Walsh takes the ride. I'd imagine Fakir Dudares is in there potentially to benefit So Scottish. I think he's the best handicapped horse in the race, Johnny Ward, and I think he'll win.
Beautiful. Okay, that's a lot of confidence from our man today. Now, just before we finish up this part of the show, the Albert Barton Novice Hurdle, DJ, is basically a preview, sort of a prep race for the actual one at Cheltenham. I thought this was quite a tight contest. Now, you're looking at maybe Destroy the Evidence sort of for Kim Bailey and David Bass. Briefly, what do you like?
I like Illico de Cot, I think is how you pronounce it. I butchered the first half of that, but Illico de Cot for Dan and Harry Skelton. I think Illico de Cot was probably the best horse in the race at Lingfield. Was beaten by a young horse of Venetia Williams. Did everything right and was just beaten basically on his first start for Dan and Harry last time at Lingfield. It just struck me like a horse that will improve drastically from first to second run, and the Skelton teams have been improving for a run. It's around about 7-1. I thought that was a little bit of each way value. Illico de Cot.
Give us a selection for Saturday.
Just in general,
yeah,
or,
give us one for,
in those races?
Yeah, give us a general selection, actually.
Okay, well, in the last race at Cheltenham, I thought a very good horse of Fergal O'Brien's won the first race at Cheltenham today, called Dice Ardinos, who I think will be a big player in the Mayor's Cheltenham. Yeah, but he's got another, like, not as good as Di Sardino. It's not even near as good, but I think she's a talented enough filly called Bonte that runs in the 3:35 at Cheltenham tomorrow. She's a strong traveller. She's consistent. She gets in here with 10 stone 8 with Paddy Brennan. I'd imagine Fergal O'Brien knows his onions. He targets the right races for his horses, and I think Bonte has probably been targeted at this race for quite a while. So Bonte for me around about 7-2 in that 3:35 at Cheltenham.
I'm going for a flyer, the 140 at Fairyhouse. Shanro Act for Carl Thornton, who has a couple in the race. Adrian Heskin riding. So I'm going for a little bit of a flyer there. But so that is that's the first half of the show. This is the Racing Pod and Off the Ball. If you listen to the free version of the podcast, we're leaving you here. If you're looking for more, including our analysis of additional races this weekend across Ireland and Britain, go to offtheball.com/join to subscribe. Get the full podcast every Friday with all our racing tips, which were pretty incredible, has to be said, last Friday, and stories from this week's action.